Why are you here?
I'm looking for a great warrior.
So what kind of warrior have you been?
The way of the warrior.
He needed a warrior's mind.
Clearly, this was all planned by warriors of...
Warriors. Now is the time.
Hi, this is Sarah Madras, and you're listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. I am a warrior of courage.
All right, and we are live. This is the Warrior of Impact podcast. I am Michael Rowland, joined as always with Shannon Matthews, and we have a very special guest on today. I'm so excited that we have my coach on as our guest today, Sarah Madras. Sarah Madras is a former licensed mental health coach, or former mental health therapist, I should say, turned into a mindset and transformation coach. I promise you this is not going to be a full episode of me just standing on my soapbox about how amazing she is, but I promise you that she is. And I have worked
Come on, that'll be fun. I'll just sit back.
Yeah, just a whole, it'll be like the anti-roast episode. It'll just be like adorning you with all the glory that you deserve.
You can just watch me get red.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. But I'm really excited because when we first launched the podcast, you were the first person that I said, well, it's just full circle moment, right? To be able to sit here after all this time, because in a lot of ways, I am in this seat and everything that I'm doing because of the time that we've worked together. So I want to give you some space here to tell your journey, tell your story, and share a little bit about you, and then we'll get it going.
And I didn't even think about that. It totally is a full circle moment because we met because you were filming our podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally is. I didn't even put that together.
Yeah, just give us like your 10,000 foot view, story here. Like, who is Sarah Madras?
Who is Sarah Madras? Ooh, I was like, do you want the clean version or do you want the real version?
Oh, we are. Let's get real. Yes. We put the explicit E on our episodes, so you can be as real as you want.
Please, we love authenticity.
So I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and the joke is always that, don't get her started because the Tampa ghetto will come out. And so it was an interesting childhood of lots of stories that a lot of people are like my husband who grew up in these really safe and wholesome environments and stuff. They look at me and they're like, what? And I was like, wait, other people didn't experience those weird things as part of their childhood and upbringing? I'll give you one story to kick it off. The house that I grew up in, it was my cousin's house, my house, our neighbor's house, and a big empty lot. And we had woods all behind us. Well, one day, some kind of cult of some sort was doing a ritual in the field next to our house and like killing chickens in full drab. And we saw them going in with all full cape and everything and had to call the police. And it was just like, oh yeah, like that's just another day in the neighborhood of where
just a Tuesday.
Yeah. So it's so funny because I have a lot of those experiences growing up. It's the contrast, right? And then it was like, big Italian family with, the big Sunday dinners and everything was loud. And people who aren't used to that would be like, why is everybody yelling at everybody all the time? And I used to think that as a kid too, like, God, why are the aunts and uncles so angry with each other? And then when I got older, I realized, they're just talking and having like 5 conversations at one time.
Isn't it so amazing? And I believe I sent you that quote the other day that I found that the people who grew up in these dramatic environments see peace as boredom. Right. And I think that's right there, right? Because I think the people who have that level of chaos, mm-hmm. And it becomes normalcy, right? And now, granted, there's a difference between trauma, toxicity, right. and just everyday, just weird shit.
Yes.
And I think that there's things like that add character, and then there's things that develop us. And so right. I think that there's that's kind of They're different conduits of change in that aspect.
Totally. And that it's so funny because people are always like, I had no idea that, like, they're like, I had no idea about you that way, of like that you grew up in that, environment and stuff. And so it always trips people up when I'm like, yeah, so my background of where I grew up in the environment is this. And they're looking at me like, what? No way that you're this normal and like that you have this level of skill set. And that's what got me to we are built, we are not born. And I truly believe that. So that despite whatever environments or whatever crazy things, or whether that chaos was traumatic or just loud family, gatherings, is we can always build the skills that we need or the skills that we want and do things differently as adults. We can always evolve and learn new and different ways. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I love that that concept of built not born, because I think that what we oftentimes do, and this is stuff that we've worked with, and I know you work with a lot of your coaches, is the idea behind like the stories that we tell ourselves through the process of like neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
We create these narratives that are so far from the truth, but because we are like, well, no, I was born this way, or this is the environment that I grew up in, or this is all I've ever known, like those type of statements that keep us
Yeah.
rooted in learned behavior. And
Yeah.
so what I think when you say built not born is really like you taking ownership of what you want your foundation to the roof to be, not this is just how it is, so let me make the best out of it. It's like, well, no, you get the opportunity to just make whatever you want,
For
whether it's
sure.
starting over or
Yeah,
building
I'll demo
on.
that beast down if I have to. Like if I don't like that house that I just built and that I'm living in, I will demo that beast down and start over if I need to. And it makes what you said makes me think too of the concept of trait versus state, right? Like, yeah, we have these traits that are innate to us and that we're born with and are kind of wired, like the whole nature versus nurture. And so nature is this, I have this trait versus state, where sometimes I'm in this state, right? So I'm super passionate, which means I'm super fiery. And it takes a lot. Like my natural trait is to be like back in the day before I had the skills, I could anger easily, right? And it was like, get out the way. Like if the anger came, it was the volcano erupting. And so that was the trait. And then it was, okay, well, I've learned the skills to, manage anger, to handle emotions, things like that, be in command. And so then it's shift to, well, maybe I'm just in a state. Maybe that is just a momentary state of feeling that level of rage or that level of explosion or something like that.
So how do you think individuals can get to a place where they don't have to always put like a caution label on their words or their actions? Because like I very much too, very much like a firecracker, always just always on. And I think that comes with like people of passion, people who are really committed to what they're doing. But how do we get from a place of having to say I'm extra, so beware, and just like that place of ownership of that, and be like, hey, look, these people are my people, and if this isn't vibe with you, then maybe you're just not my people. But how do we get
For
there?
sure. I think it is that journey of self love, self acceptance, the grounded confidence skills. I've always been extra. I've always been a too much girl, right? Everything was always bigger. Like, y'all, even from birthday parties, like as a kid, birthday parties, it wasn't just like, oh, like have friends over. Like for my 16th birthday, it was this huge, ginormous, epic, sweet 16 birthday party. That's just how I'm wired. Everything's over the top. Cause like, it's just like, oh, that's so fun. Oh, that's so exciting. And let's do that. And so for a lot of people, it is a turnoff of, oh, like, oh, she's a little too extra for me. And so instead of it being like, hey, yeah, I'm extra and beware, because that's more of looking at it as a bad thing. It's like, hey, what are the things? Yes, I'm extra. Do I like that about myself? Or is it something that I do want to tone down? And that's like the first step. do I like this? Do I want to change it? How does it serve me? How does it not serve me? And am I okay with that? And then once I asked myself those questions and was like, man, I'm actually really okay with being extra, because when I do things for other people, it's extra and it makes them feel amazing. And so I was like, no, I like the extra. So I'm going to embrace it. And then that's just the matter of acceptance. So it's like the decision. And then once you decide, then you can move through to acceptance and really having that grounded confidence of, hey, I'm extra. And if you're extra too, it's going to be hella fun,
Right.
like the greatest fireworks show ever. And if not, that's okay too. Maybe you'll just only hang out with me for an hour,
Right. And here's a clear indicator that we are from the same tribe. I too was a very over the top birthday party person. And so for my 23rd birthday, which is such an off birthday to like go crazy
Right.
for, I built a 16 by 16 foot stage, had 7 bands in the cul-de-sac lined up. We had about 150 people there when the police showed up. The ALE showed up, and what I recognized was I would throw these parties and like we would have these hordes of people, and I like my circle just always grew. And then what I started realizing is like you have your core people and then you have your spectators.
Mhm.
Right? The people that are along for the ride, well, like this guy's a good time. I might not always be able to vibe, but when we can engage, I'm gonna put my trailer on that cart, and I think we all need those people. Like when we do have this like energy to expunge, like sometimes the people that, we are around can be those people that can use what we can give in those environments and times and in the seasons that we are. Like I became very aware of energy vampires. And then
Mhm.
at times I realized maybe I'm an energy vampire in the opposite direction for people, right?
Right.
I guess we have a full house today because I'm also super extra. Growing up, I grew up in absolute poverty. And so when I became an adult and I was financially secure, I took that extra for my kids.
Mhm.
Like they always had over the top birthday parties. And I would just go all out. I would start planning like a month and a half in advance. And now that my kids are older, I try to do for their 16th birthdays, I took them on cruises. We're doing that. And so I always tried to go over and beyond for them so I could kind of live vicariously through these huge parties I would throw for them. But also, my best friend, she always says I'm so extra. I'm totally into glitter, unicorns, sparkly. And I used to feel like, oh, that's so childish. And then when I hit about 40, I said, you know what? I'm going to embrace it. You know
Mhm.
what? I like sparkles. I like unicorns. And if that turns people off or if they think that makes me childish, then they're not my people.
Yeah. 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 I think you do. You just hit this place where it takes so much energy to meet other people's expectations or, care about how other people are perceiving you or judging you. That at a certain point in life, you're like, yo, I just don't have the energy left over for that. You're like, I'm already utilizing it for these other things. I don't have any, and it's like, I don't have any more shits to give. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
I-
going to be myself. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And that's okay. Like you said, Sarah, if I'm too much for you, or if any of us are too much for you, then maybe we're just not each other's people. And that's okay. Not everybody has to like you. I know when I was younger, and maybe the two of you had this also when you were younger, but you want everyone to like you. And you think if there's someone who doesn't like you, that there's a lack or something wrong with you. And as you get older, you learn, no, that's not true. You're not meant for everyone.
Right.
You're meant
Right.
for your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a big distinction to make with that. I think there's a big difference between I don't care what people think and it doesn't phase me what people think.
Mhm.
I
Right.
think that that's vital, and that because I think it's so easy to be like, I don't fucking care. Like that's kind of like the meme where you see them throwing the papers up in the air and they're just like, I'm insensitive to her. It doesn't phase me in that
Immune. Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and I think you're right because and I always, when people are like, well, I don't care what people think, I'm like, I call bullshit on that. We care. We just may not let it stop us. We might not let it negatively impact or influence us. We have that moment of caring of like, oh, damn, like nobody likes to not be liked. That goes against our hard wiring for connection and belonging as humans. And so you might have that nanosecond of like, oh, damn, that sucks. I wish they like me, but if they don't, okay. And then you keep going. But you're not like, yes, someone out there dislikes me. Like, that's a whole different pathology.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of not caring if somebody likes you or not. It's a matter of caring more about self-love and being in alignment and authentic to who you truly are.
Love that. Love that.
And I think that we have to take that same approach in our business, because just like you won't be for everyone, your business won't be for everyone. And like I said before, and like you just said, you do want people to like you. You do want people to like your business, but you have to realize that there are certain places where your energy belongs.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone doesn't like you, or if your business doesn't appeal to them, spending your energy not only is a disservice to yourself, but it's a disservice to them as well.
Exactly.
And so it's just better to say, you know what, we're not meant for each other, and just walk away, for both of you, not just for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And what's so interesting is when we're doing like connection calls with clients or whatever, we do the whole like, listen, if you're looking for a coach, like if you're looking for a coach who's like in your face, a little more over here on the masculine energy, more direct, more, I don't want to use the word abrasive because that has a negative connotation, but just more forceful, that's not me. I know an amazing mindset coach out there who is that more masculine energy and, more forceful with their delivery, more direct, more challenging in the delivery. And she's amazing. And I'll refer you there. If you're wanting somebody who's like super passive and is just going to like hold space and just like let you do your thing and not challenge and be all the way over here, I'm like, that's not me either. But it's been best described of like, I'm firm but fair. Like, I'm going to give you the truth, but like my clients will be like, you give me the truth, but you deliver it in such a way with such love that I'm actually able to receive it. I'm actually able to take it in. So I'm like, if you're looking for that, then you're my people. If not, that's okay. I'll direct you to amazing coaches who are on the other ends of that continuum, right?
Yeah. There's been multiple times where we've been like in a coaching session together where I'm like, thank you for letting me hate you right now. because that's how it is. It's like you call somebody on their shit in a way that they need to hear it, right? It's like, I wouldn't be doing you a service right now if, to the point where, and we talk a lot about the words and the phrases and how we say something matters as much as, what we're saying, to the point where like, it started out as me like tiptoeing around the phrases of, you start replacing this, but it hardwires us into the approach of this is all about your mindset and really remapping and really getting you to a place on the 6 days in the week or the times that we're not in conversation, because it can't always be about the time that you're working on your growth in a very physical processing kind of sense. So I love, and this is, we could dive into childhood and our upbringing and foundation for hours, but I want to make sure that we cover as much as we can today. So just give us a little roadmap from the unique childhood experience to what brought you into the world of therapy. Let's kind of start there.
So that unique childhood experience actually is what drew me to social work to begin with, is because I was in this environment of so many different cultures, so many different socioeconomic backgrounds. and I was exposed to so much more than a lot of people are exposed to. And it really implanted my core value of we are all equally worthy simply because we exist. I'm not putting people into hierarchies based on class or socioeconomic status or anything. Like, I really was able to see all the value that people bring and that every single person has a value that they bring. And that is 100% in alignment with social work. And so it was like finding my first home. When I got into social work school, that was literally finding my first home. And I just, everything that they believe, all their values and things like that's totally in alignment. And so went through social work school, got licensed, I moved from Florida, came up here as soon as I graduated. Florida never felt like home to me. And so I was like, well, now I know what it feels like to experience home from the School of Social Work. Now I want to experience that in my life. Moved to North Carolina, and there was so much mental health reform happening. And I started at my first job, and it was just awful, and the culture was horrible, and there was all Medicaid fraud happening. And I was like, oh, I can't be a part of this. So left that job, went to another job doing group home. And I remember being in staff meetings, and they would yell and slam on the desk and talk horribly to the staff. And I was just like, I literally would look around the room, and everybody, these are adults. Like, we are grown adults, and we're like standing there letting other adults scream at us and talk down to us. And I was just like, this does not compute. And so I left that place, worked at another place. That owner ended up in like on the news. They were trying to, like, for fraud, and I was like, that's it. Like, I have given it a good old try here to work for somebody else, and I just can't do it. And so I was like, as entrepreneurs, we build what it is that we need ourselves. And so I said, I'm going to build my own counseling agency. And for the whole mission and sole purpose is to be a safe place for clients to get good professional services and be treated with respect, and for the therapist to find a safe place that's professional, ethical, and be treated with respect. And so I started my first business back in 2007, and now have grown that to I have 15 people that work for me on my team, an amazing team of therapists who we've helped over the last 15 years, thousands and thousands of clients in the community. And it is the most rewarding, amazing, like it's knowing you're living your purpose, and that level of validation, the exhale that you receive inside, like the expansion of like, oh, it fills you up and your heart wants to explode. And it's this piece of like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's the both things is we're serving these clients. And then all the therapists on my team are like, I'm never working anywhere else. Like, I'm so glad I found you. We all have horror stories from places we worked at before. So that's how that journey into that business happened. And then from working with clients for so many years, I started out working with kids because I was like, I'm going to save all the children. Like, I have my minor in child welfare. Like, I was like, I'm saving all the children and giving them a voice. And, that I was like guardian ad litem, the whole shebang. And I realized from working with kids, you can help the kids and give them all kinds of skills. But if you're not working with the parents, you're just setting those kids up to have a whole new level of awareness. Then they have skills that the parents don't even have. And I'm putting them in these environments that are going to be unsuccessful because the parents don't have skills. So then I transitioned to working with the parents and was doing couples. That made such a huge difference because it trickles down, right? Like, if you start at the top, so then the parents were doing great. So then the kids were doing great. I was like, yes. But then the parents said to me, okay, this is great. Now I have all these skills and my marriage is great. The family's great. But I go to work for 8 hours and now I see all the crap that's happening at my office. Can you please go to my work and teach these same skills to my boss and the team and yada, yada, yada. And I fought it for probably about 2 years. And then everything happened with civil unrest. And it literally felt like a bat signal. Like, I could feel the pull. Like, it felt like something was pulling me in that direction of more people need these skills so that we're not having these situations happen. If more people have these skills, then less of these situations will happen. But I'm going to be honest with you. I drugged my feet for 2 years because I was like, one, who am I to be doing this? Like, who do you think you are to be doing this? Like, you're just a little bitty therapist that sits in your office and treats couples and they come in and you know what I mean? And the other thing was, Sarah, you're a little white girl. Like, how are you supposed to be standing in that arena and in between those conversations? Who are you to be doing that? That is like, you don't have a right to be doing that. Like, I felt like I was being like that I was offending the African American community by like, here comes the person who thinks they're the white savior and is gonna, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And my friend actually said to me, an African American male, he said to me one day, he was like, Sarah, you are the person that has these skills. He's like, my community needs you. He's like, my son needs you in these conversations so that he's not in these situations anymore. We need you. So get over your stuff and be out there to help us. He's like, you don't have to know the room in order to own the room. He's like, you already have the skills, own that, and then be that bridge for people. And so that was really the catalyst that I was like, okay, it's not about me. It's not about my insecurities. It's about me serving others and serving the work. And that's when I transitioned into doing coaching and got certified and was using my certification. I was certified in Dare to Lead before then, but that was how it prompted me to start working with law enforcement and towns and business owners of how do they have these hard conversations about race, about religion, about sexuality, about, so that their employee, about emotions, about life, so that their employees can show up as their whole selves and bring their whole best selves to work. And so that's how it happened.
I think that's so important because for a lot of people, they spend more time at work than they do at home. And so if you're one way to describe it is if you're in an abusive relationship with your job, you can't leave that at the door. You're carrying that home. Mm-hmm. So the place to start is by changing the workplace. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it trickles down because we spend more time when we work for someone else there and with our coworkers than we do with the people in our own families.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So one of the things that I wanted to kind of go back to really quickly, because I think this kind of all ties together, is we've all proclaimed that we are a 3-person tribe of extra folk right now. But one of the things that is like a repetitive pattern that I see, not only in our conversation here, but like just in life in general, is sometimes I think when we say extra, we can pinpoint points in our life when we say extra, we really meant eager, right? Like when we are that young, green behind the ear, savior of the masses. And I think that this shows up very often when we find our purpose, when we know our mission and it's clear as day. It's almost like the negative side of that tunnel vision. Like, it's like, I know where I'm going, but you're steamrolling all the other stuff that like you're supposed to do on the way there. So how do you balance service with, using the example of like the kids, the families, with like bubble wrapping the earth, right? Like your new kid driver, you want to go out and put pillows everywhere, or, when the kid starts walking, you put the corner table stoppers. How do we balance serving with trying to go out and put on our cape all the time?
Mm-hmm. So I think for me, what I've noticed lately is the shift from service versus saving, right? And so in counseling, it was very clear if I was working harder than the client. So that is the cue of you are trying to save rather than you are trying to serve. Because at the end of the day, you have to save yourself. I can equip you and I can encourage you and I can help you build the confidence and I can believe in you and I can give you all the tangible skills. And at the end of the day, if you do nothing with it, then that I can't do anything about that. So I think that's the difference between serving and saving. And like even in the organizations when I'm working with them, if if you're not implementing, then you've just wasted all of our time and all of our money. And it takes a toll on the person with the servant's heart. Like we have a servant's heart, right? And we want to go above and beyond. And so that's kind of for me my threshold of knowing, am I putting in more effort than the client? And if that's the case, then I know I'm teetering on saving versus serving. And I know that I then need to have a hard conversation with the client and be like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. What do you think about that? What's going on here? Do you not think you're worthy of saving yourself? Where are we missing that lacking or that missing gap in confidence? And I think too, the other thing that I noticed, in full transparency, it's only because I hit the wall. I smacked into the wall, concussion, like,
Here's
oh
your sign.
crap moment, right? Is if we're serving so extra that then we have depleted ourselves, that then it's, oh, I've gone too far, right? And really having to find that place of harmony of I can serve, because serving is an output, that's a give, and I can allow myself to receive. And having that equilibrium between that. And it's not going to be a 50-50 balance. I don't believe in any of that mess. You know what I mean? Nothing is ever perfectly equal in humans, because in nature maybe, but not in humans. And so knowing what is that harmony place for me, maybe that's service at 60% and receive at 40%, but making sure that it's cyclical. And for me, in the work of doing Dare to Lead, every time I'm equipping people with the skills and I'm seeing them use it, I'm seeing them transform, I'm seeing their mindset transform, their actions transform, how they perform in their jobs, how they're interacting at home, their relationships, everything about their experience in this lifetime shifts. And that gives me so much hope. And I think it's that cycle of continual hope that I receive of doing this work that that fills up the servant's heart too. Is because even though there's all these crazy horrible things going on in the world, and as a servant's heart or an extra person who feels things extra, who experiences things on an extra level, it can take an extra toll, right? Like we feel things intensely, the good and the bad. And so we can really become disheartened and demoralized when we experiencing and seeing all those things that are going on around us. And so it's just, for me, it's being really intentional about, oh man, that one thing that my client said of how they shifted that thought, and then that shifted how they interact with their kids. And now they're teaching their kids that fills me with so much hope for the future. So much hope for cultures of how organizations are working and the ripple effects that I know that has on their families, on their kids. Like it just is amazing. And so it really does just fill me up with hope.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we have recognized in working together, and something that I've recognized in my journey to coaching, is you have to do it all, right? Like you can't just come to somebody that says, okay, I want to transform this part of my life. And it's whether it's you want to get healthy in a physical sense, or you want to heal a relationship, or you want to be, better with business. It does all connect, because you can't be an asshole, in 75% of your life and then be an angel in 25%. It just doesn't work that way. Because it's going to bleed through. Now you might be able to fake it, but then it's not really authentic, and it's really not going to live to the full purpose. So I think with that comes like the approach that you talk a lot about, is like the bravery, the adapting, the removing the armor of courage, and shifting into the mindset. So kind of just walk us through the the approach. So when you are approached by an organization or you go speak with an organization who has maybe never been introduced to some of this stuff, I think I remember seeing one of the reviews from the law enforcement here in Holly Springs. You know, these are, for lack of better terms, and I know some of the people on the force, very outdated, good old boy type people who, for the first time hearing you, is probably the first time that a lot of these people have even tried to dissect some of this, ideology. So,
Yeah.
how do you approach this? And I know one of the things that you say is, clear as kindness and being very direct in approach. So, how do we shift and make change to people who are maybe just not even aware?
Right. Yeah, totally. And I love this story because with the law enforcement, I remember it clear as day. The first time I was doing Dare to Lead, they come in, I'm working with the leadership team, and covered in tattoos, like, big dude. He comes in full uniform, and we're going around the room, and he's like, about like, what brought you here? What do you hope to get out of this experience? Da, da, da. And he's like, I'm here because I have to be here because I was told. So I'm showing up. And I was like, all right. So we go through the whole training. And that is I think he was the first one who broke tears and started crying at a point in the training. He's the one I stay in contact with the most. He's the one who reached out and was like, I'm using this in co-parenting and it's really working. And so to me, it's one, it starts with me not armoring up myself and not getting my feelings hurt or being offended or telling myself any type of story when I get presented with that kind of, I'm here because I have to be here, or I've been doing this my whole life. What could you possibly teach me? That's another thing I've gotten a lot of times. And it's not even just law enforcement, it's all these organizations I'm going into. They have been programmed. Our society has programmed them with the old model of leaders are based on titles and how long you've been at the company and how much money you make, how big your office is, how far you've worked up the ladder. And they've been programmed to compartmentalize. Like, just like you said, people are like, well, are you talking about my work life or my home life? And I'm like, well, you're the same person. So that means it's the same thing. Like, you're not, but our society has trained people of check your emotions at the door. It's not personal, it's business. All of those messages for decades. And so I'm aware of, hey, this is how people have been programmed, whether they are aware of it or not. And so instead of me fighting against it and being like, that way is wrong, because then they hear I'm wrong, I'm bad, I just say, hey, here's another way. They choose whether they want to have it live in their bones and embrace it or not. And as it's unraveling and unfolding, and they're seeing, and they're having all of those light bulb awareness moments, that's what it is that starts to get them to shift, is they're like, I totally experienced that. I totally felt that way. So throughout the training, when we're learning the skills of trust, when we're learning what does trust mean, what are the 7 components, and I'm using story when I'm training. And so they can attach to the story and they can see themselves in those experiences. They're going, oh my gosh, a old boss, I'm remembering them in my mind right now. And so going through it and doing the work is what causes a shift, because they're going through awareness, then action, and like awareness, action taking, and then practicing. And so by the end of it, it speaks for itself when you see results. When you don't see results, you're going to be like, that's a bunch of crap. Just like if I'm like, Michael, if after E2M, if ain't nothing has happened and I don't feel any type of better, I'm going to be like, F you, E2M, that mess didn't work, right? And so we've got to see we have to get some type of return on our investment of our time, our investment of our energy. And if there's no return, if we're not receiving any type of benefit from it, then we're like, this is not valuable to me. This was a waste of my time, money, effort. because it's such powerful work, because it's the inner work that reflects outwardly, there's always a huge benefit and a huge ROI. I never question if they're going to have an ROI. And so that's why I don't get my panties in a wad when somebody shows up and is like, I'm just here because I have to be. Because I'm like, cool, at least you're here.
Yeah,
And
you
it's
showed up.
going to start to unravel as we go.
So how do you resist falling into the trap of being a savior when you go into an organization and you just recognize the moment you walk in the door, this is toxic culture, or you get in group discussion and one after another everyone's pointing finger at the boss and like, yeah, that guy's an asshole, and this is a safe space, right? So that guy's an asshole. Like, how do you make sure that you save space to maybe help them become less of an asshole without, like, because I feel like that has to be a delicate balance, right? Of making sure that you are representing your core values and not bending those, while also making sure that you are meeting people where they are. And,
Yeah.
The goal should not be for you to like leave there healing everybody as much as like, providing the resources, providing the tools, and them doing the work. But how do you resist like showing up with that cape on and
Yeah.
getting ready to go?
Yep. So I've actually had that experience, and it was deeply, deeply heartbreaking because I could see all of the pain, like clearly see it. And to see everyone in the organization experiencing that depth of pain, and they're so stuck in the pain that they can't get out of it, no matter what I give them, no matter how hard I work, no matter like, how often I show up, they're so stuck in that pain. And so in that moment, because, okay, back to like the boss who's the asshole. No one wants to be an asshole. Like at the end of the day, no one is like, I want to be an asshole and create a horrible work environment that then makes my life harder. Because at the end of the day, as the boss, it still makes your life harder. You're having disgruntled employees that you're constantly butting heads with, and it just creates more conflict. So nobody really wants to be the asshole. And so if that's the case, then I shift my attention to what is the deeper meaning, what is going on here? What is the hidden meaning? What is the hidden pain that is causing this? And so it goes back to the whole hurt people hurt people. And what I tell people is they're not doing something to you, they're doing something for them. Whether it's a sense of control because they feel like they have no control in all the other avenues of their life, whether they are in the middle of, compounded, complicated grief, and that micromanaging and that control gives them is how they're managing their grief. They're offloading their hurt onto other people in order to meet a need in them, whether that need is safety, security, to feel powerful because they feel powerless inside. And so I actually have to then shift and kind of pause the skill building for the team and shift and be like, let's go and kind of like an archaeologist, like let's dig in here and unpack what is the hidden meaning and the root cause that's causing all the behavior. If I just take away one behavior and I'm like, don't micromanage your team, it's bad. And I'm like, let me take away that behavior. But I never address the root cause. A new unhealthy behavior is going to come up. So I have done them a disservice is if I go in there and all I'm focusing on is ineffective and unproductive behaviors. No, I'm going to pause. I'm going to become the, explorer, and I'm going to figure out, let's dig around here. Let's mine for gold. Oh, the gold is that this is unhealed trauma that's showing itself up in the workplace and how you lead. Let's heal that trauma first.
Yeah. So I think that when people think or hear the word mindset, especially if it's somebody who is hearing it for the first time, I think the natural inclination is to kind of visit the land of woo woo, or to just think of it as how I talk to myself, how I think about myself, and just kind of leave it there. How would you explain to somebody and maybe how you explain to people when they're first approaching changing their mindset and changing that narrative in a way that is beyond just talk to themselves and how they see themselves.
Right, right. So, and I'm not knocking any of these things. They're all valuable tools that can be utilized at different phases, right? So things like affirmations or fake it till you make it and visualize it, like visualize and lean into that energy before it happens. Like, I'm not knocking any of that stuff. I think what the difference between the type of mindset that I do versus some of other mindset coaches is it goes way deeper. Like, we're rewiring your brain. Like, it's very grounded in science. And a lot of woo is grounded in science too. So
Yeah.
let me just put that out there. But it's very grounded in science and starting at, if we go, okay, just think positive thoughts, that's only addressing this layer. We haven't gotten to the actual start of the layer. And the start of the layer is the stories that our brain tells ourselves. The stories that we tell ourselves that then birth our beliefs, then our beliefs birth our thoughts, then our thoughts birth our feelings. So if I'm just starting at my thoughts, I'm not actually at the root.
Right. I was going to say, you can't just like trim the hedges. You got to get down and uproot it.
Yes.
You gotta find where that seed of doubt was planted. You gotta find where that seed of envy, greed, whatever the story you're saying, for sure.
Yes. And so it's twofold, right? Because yeah, we have this story that we told ourselves, then we attach meaning to it. And so what is the meaning that we attach to that? And a lot of times, and I know even from in my own experience, there are times when I'm experiencing something inside and I'm like, God, where is this coming from? I can't figure it out. I can't find the language. I can't find the emotion or the language that creates the form for my experience, right? And so we're at a deficit as humans because we are not taught emotional intelligence, especially males. You guys are actually stripped of it and told to not, suck it up, be a man, all those awful toxic messages that you guys get. Well, us as a society, we're not taught an extensive language of emotion. We're usually taught happy, sad, angry. Like, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad, or I'm pissed off. And so imagine going your whole life and you're trying to describe a story or an experience, but the only three labels and meaning you can put on them is happy, sad, or pissed off. We're so much more complicated than that. And so when we don't have the language of, oh, what I'm actually feeling right now is loneliness, or I'm feeling threatened, or I'm feeling disappointment, or I'm feeling regret, like, or embarrassment. This Sunday, yeah, it was Sunday, my son was playing with the neighbors, and my youngest son is the smallest and the youngest over there. The rest of them are older. He came home crying, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, well, Landon, my 10-year-old, they were playing on the trampoline. He fell on him. He's like, he fell on me. The other kids were laughing, blah, blah, this whole thing. And I was like, well, how did that make you feel? And he goes, I felt hurt, I felt embarrassed, and I felt alone. Now, how much different is that conversation and that experience of talking to his brother of when you did not stick up for me, when you did not tell those kids, because then they were playing dodgeball and they all three ganged up on him. And so he was like, how different is that story of communicating that experience of I felt hurt when you fell on me, I felt embarrassed that they were laughing at me, and then I felt alone because you guys were ganging up on me and nobody like, game changer of that experience versus I'm sad and I'm crying.
Yeah. So what makes me think of, like, when you say like we've got to get to the root, it's, when you say something, you kind of analyze like, well, what are you really saying, or what are you really trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we're hiding, right? It's I think as creatures of habit and of like interpersonal communications, we want the answer to why, We just don't always ask why, or we're not honest with saying that we have a why. We have expectations, we just don't always make those expectations known. And that's for ourselves and under others. And then I think that brings up my favorite topic with talking with you then is boundaries. Right? It's like, we know that like what we're saying is not always what we're really saying. So like, okay, what are you really saying? That's to me that
Right.
recipe for mindset. Then it's the expectation behind that, and then it's the, well, what can I do about it and what can I really expect? How do we
Right.
set that? How do we break that down? So we could go on a whole like tirade for like hours about boundaries, but I want to just kind of bring it like into the scope here, because I think it really does bring us from a well-rounded perspective of getting from a place of uncovering that root to uprooting it in a place that it serves us well, to then not allowing that to get planted again.
Yep. And so in that example, I'll use my son as the example since I already said that story. So in that example with him, then it's okay, Lennox, establish the boundary with your brother. And boundaries in our world means what is okay and what is not okay with you. And so my son can say, it is okay that you accidentally fell on me. It's not okay that you didn't say anything when the kids were laughing at me. It is okay that we all play dodgeball. It's not okay when the three of you are only throwing the ball at me and I'm the smallest and the youngest. Like that's what boundaries look like. That's what self advocacy looks like. But here's the thing, if I wouldn't like, one, we're not taught the language to be able to have the awareness of what am I really feeling underneath, what is the meaning that I'm attaching to the story. And then when we're trying to communicate it to somebody else, they're not taught what those words mean, and what embarrassment means to you might mean something different to somebody else. And so we might not be speaking the same language. So then that's why we have that miscommunication, unmet need, crossed boundary, unmet expectation. So then you have to take it a step further and go, let me be really clear, because clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And people walk around being like, well, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be mean. Well, you didn't say anything to them, but then I guarantee you went and said something to somebody else. And that's mean. Why not just be clear with that person of, hey, that's not okay with me, rather than being like, and so I've taught my son, when somebody apologizes, you don't say it's okay, because their behavior was not okay, or they wouldn't need to be freaking apologizing. Instead, you say, I forgive you.
Right.
Big difference. And so it's, hey, it's not okay to do that. This is not okay with me, versus I'm going to say, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. That's okay. And then I'm going to go and complain to my husband about, I can't believe so-and-so did this.
Yeah. And one of the rules with my daughter is an apology without a change of action is not an apology at all. It's the same kind of concept. It's not, I'm not going to disregard the value of your apology, much like I don't expect you to disregard my expectation for what happens after it.
Yep.
And I think that that's so important, because I could do that with my daughter, but if I don't do that at every other point in my life, I'm not setting the example for me, but for her or for anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think going back to that root, I think it'd be beneficial to kind of identify the cause of those roots, right? So we talk in that example of, embarrassment, but I think embarrassment and shame's, I know, a very big one that you are a proponent of, and I think we recognize. But I think that all kind of lumps under one umbrella, which is like fear. It's fear of the unknown, fear of the uncomfortable, outright fear of, something negative happening to us because of us. So how do we protect ourselves and our assets, if you will, of life without being overly worried all the time, walking on eggshells, or super protective? I can't let this thought enter my brain because I might, I don't trust myself to manage this thought. Like I think that
Yes.
brings like a sense of like dissociation and paranoia to it if you lived your life like that.
Yeah. And you're so right. I don't trust myself to have this thought. That's exactly it. Why do you think people deflect so many things? Is they're like, I don't know. It's too much for me. I don't want to go there because of what I'm afraid it will say about me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think I hear that more with like positive talk. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it yet because I don't want to ruin the. I don't want to talk about this new
I don't want to jinx
relationship
it
because I don't want to jinx it." Exactly.
Yes. And so honestly, okay, so because to me, even under the fear, right, it's vulnerability. Like the definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Vulnerability is you can't control the outcome. And at the end of the day, fear is I don't know what's going to happen and I can't control the outcome. So I'm so freaking vulnerable right now that I'm going to try to protect myself, whether that's protecting myself and my armor is humor, whether my armor is sarcasm, whether my armor is, anger and rage or ridicule, or maybe I'm protecting myself by not allowing myself to own my gifts, by minimizing the value and impact I have on the world, right? By being like, I don't want to jinx it. So I'm not going to say how amazing this opportunity is, or I'm not going to receive this positive feedback, right? So what do? The answer to that is essentially we ground ourselves in such deep confidence that it's like roots of a tree. And that we build trust in ourselves so strong that the roots just keep going more and more and more into the ground so that we can stand tall. We can wave our branches in the breeze and be joyous and be extra. We can share our fruit like we're an apple tree. We can share our fruits and our gifts with other people. And we know that a storm is inevitably going to come. And no matter how the winds are or who the human is that comes with the axe to chop us down, that we know our roots are so deep that it's never going to kill us. It's never going to uproot us. It's never going to pull us completely out of the ground. It's never going to take everything away.
So how can we? I think as humans, and you said there is certain inevitabilities of life,
Mm-hmm.
and where my mind goes with that is we are creatures of habit. So we tend to follow these cyclical approaches to things or patterns. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if we're being honest with ourselves, we have some source or some sense of pattern recognition. You know, I go through this cycle, and these are how things are. These are how things have been. How things will be. How do we focus on things like pattern recognition from a place of ownership versus persecution, especially when we're looking to make the change, right? Like, I want to break the cycle of addiction. I want to break the cycle of abuse. I want to break the cycle of negative self talk. How do we do that from a place of ownership versus persecution?
From a place of ownership rather than persecution is, to me, it's just surrender, right? Surrendering of the way I was doing it wasn't working. And so I'm going to surrender to learning new things, surrounding myself with new people, and not trying to keep doing it on my own. That's the biggest mistake. It's, oh, I'm going to try to heal all, like, I'm going to try to heal everything all on my own by myself. We can't do that. Right? Like we can't read the label from inside the bottle. One of the members in the group said that. And I was like, that's the most beautiful phrase ever. So trying to do that work solely on your own is such an exhausting uphill battle. I'm not saying that you can't make progress. I'm just saying there's going to be so much self-sabotage, so much unconscious stuff that you can't recognize on your own, because trying to hold the mirror in front of yourself in those difficult times, your hand starts trembling, you're shaking, you can't see the reflection clearly, versus if there's someone else that you trust and circles of people that you trust, that they can hold the mirror up for you lovingly and show you the things that you can't see on your own.
Yeah. And I know I talked about this last week and I've brought it up a couple of times is we get to a place where we get as far as we can on our own, and that's not to say there's a deficit or an inability to get any further, but you're not going to be able to get there the way that you want to get there, or the path that maybe is going to be the kindest path. I think we put ourselves in these sense of like long-term torture because it's like, well, if I feel it, I'm making progress versus I have these amazing people in my life. I have these resources. I have the ability to hire a coach, to hire a personal trainer, to get a gym membership, to do the things. Like it's the tools that are available to us. And I think for some reason, and maybe it's stubbornness, maybe it's a lack of awareness to know that that's even an option.
Well, I think it's that people know it's an option. They self sabotage because at the end of the day, the reason one, we are not meant to do anything in this world alone. Nothing, literally nothing. Life is not created alone. Like we are meant to do nothing alone. And so trying to do things alone, why do we do that? Why do we try to build businesses alone? Why do we try to transform our bodies and get healthy alone? Why do we try to heal marriages alone? Why do we try all these things alone? It's because of the shame of I don't want anybody to see my messy shit. I don't want anybody to see how awkward I look trying to do a freaking lunge. So I'm at home alone doing lunges.
I think too, we put this stop on ourselves that we say, I'm not that kind of person. Like Mike said, like you get a gym membership, but you say to yourself, I'm not the type of person who goes to the gym every day, or I'm not the type of person who does this. And so when we know that we need help or that we need to bring someone into our life, we put that roadblock up because we're like, oh, I'm not that type of person. I'm not the type of girl who does this. I'm not the type of guy who does that. And so what happens is we put that burden on doing everything ourselves.
And again, that goes back to what we are culturally programmed and have been taught for decades and decades of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This ultra independence built from the ground up, that message of that's how you've earned it. And so then it goes into, well, if I had it easy, does that mean I didn't earn it or I don't deserve it? So then you'll subconsciously self-sabotage of making things harder because of the limiting belief in the programming that it has to be harder in order for me to be worth it and have actually earned it and be deserving of it.
The other thing too, I think, is we figure if something is easy for us, if there's something that we can do and it's easy for us, then we think it has no value because it's easy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it kind of makes me wonder, like, and I think this is a great question for people to pose. It's, do you know yourself or do you know the version of yourself built off of conformity? You know, it's like, do I act like this because I'm in this environment right here? Because like, I remember growing up, I had these different pockets of friend groups. Like I'd have like my friends that were the skaters and I would hang out with them over here. And then I'd have my friends from church and like our youth group. And then the athletes and the jocks and the popular kids. And oh, those popular kids, they made you the most asshole version of yourself possible. And so then I would try to have like people all together and it just didn't work out. So then I just, at a young age, really recognize like I don't like who I am in most of these situations because they're not me, because I think we take off the authenticity and we put on, you know, whatever, you know, veil we need to for that moment. And as you kind of put as like, is that armor, you know, where we're showing up to be seen, not being seen for who we are.
Yeah.
I think too, we have an inability sometimes to accept ourselves for who we are. So when we're with different people, we have different versions of ourselves. Kind of going back to what you said, Sarah, about how are you at work? How are you at home? You're the same person in both circumstances or both situations, but we program ourselves to say, like Mike, like you said, when you're with your church people, you probably did not act the same as when you were with your skater people. And which version of that is yourself?
And I think too, it's like, so I curse like a sailor. Out of respect for other people and their comfort level, when I'm in an organization, I'm reading the room, or when I'm at a speaking gig, it's not because I'm changing who I am or not showing up as my authentic self. It's because I'm being mindful and respectful and courteous of the other people in the room who might be offended by it or whatever. And so I alter it and will refrain from that, right? So it's a difference between I'm going to change who I am to fit in versus I'm going to be who I am and not do something that's going to negatively impact, or I'm going to be thoughtful to not negatively impact or offend you. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, dang. There was something else I wanted to say too, and I forgot it. Dang it, Shannon. It was right there.
If you rub the side of your
Sorry.
head, they say if you rub the side of your head, it'll come back to you.
You were saying, Michael, about the groups. And you were saying about the different groups. Oh, crap. It was right there. Oh, go ahead. It'll come.
As soon as we wrap up, it'll come back.
Yeah. So I think that the key to that, though, is like, especially for us extra folk, we don't have to be everything for everybody at all times. Like there are these, I don't see this much of a safeguard or like a filter as much as like you were saying, like these are the relationships that I have. And in time, a true intimate relationship is going to see all parts of me, but there's different pieces that are met along that journey. Like if the first time that you and I met for a coaching call, I just like vomited, and maybe I did because that's who I am. I think I actually probably did, but like in a traditional relationship or a traditional friendship, if somebody showed up and they're just like, "Woo!" You're like, turn that volume way the fuck down. Like this is, because that's just, because we don't want to intimidate, but we also want to make sure that we're demonstrating. I think the whole like notion of like if I am too much, go find less is in theory like a good idea, but what that's saying at the same time is like I'm dismissing other people's values for that space that they need too.
Yep. So I found what it was. It came back to me. So when you talked about people asking themselves the question, is this who you truly are, or is this your programming? So last week I was at a networking event at Raleigh Brewing, and we're, hanging out, networking, and in the like outdoor area, there was all these 20 somethings, and with little baby, like I think the oldest was maybe 1.5, 2, because they were like the toddle. So either they're just learning how to walk and on the hip, or toddle, so no older than 2 years old. And there's probably 30 or 40 of them out there. And it was a Wednesday night. And it looked like they just ran. I don't know if they were a run club, but they had on like exercise, looked like running clothes. And the kids are there, and they got a kid on a hip and the beer in a hand and the food truck. And I was like, and it was like 8 something at night or something. And I said, man, I freaking love those kids. They tore up that old cultural crap, and they wrote their own damn permission slip. And their own damn permission slip was, I'm still going to have fun. I'm still going to connect with my friends. I'm still going to exercise, even though I have a kid. And I was like, because when I was raising my 1-year-old, that was not the cultural norm. And I felt like I could not, like, oh my God, it's a weeknight and you're out at a bar with a baby, like from Sweet Home Alabama, when they're like, you have a baby in a bar, like that whole cultural. And I didn't rewrite the script. And I thought to myself, good for them of writing their own damn permission slips, because I bet you that's why I felt so alone in that first, especially the first year, the first time becoming a mother. I felt totally, completely alone, and literally in the nursing chair by the window, watching the world continue to live and go on without me while I'm stuck boob out all day exhausted. Because I wouldn't tear up the damn permission slip and write my own and be like, screw y'all, I'm still going to get together with my friends and have a beer in one hand and my kid in the other, and you're not going to shame me about it, because that's eliciting joy in my life. And I can still get up the next morning and go to work, even though it's a work night. Like I was
how many things do we limit ourselves from doing because we're afraid people are going to judge us?
Mm-hmm. And how many cultural Post-it notes do we need to tear up and write our own damn permission slips? Yes.
Yes, I love that. All right, let's get into our 3 questions. These are our kind of hot seat questions here for you. Yes, the sizzle is real. How do you define what it means to be a warrior? We've obviously spent a couple of episodes now really defining it. This is our whole intention of this podcast, is we want to be able to stand firm in what I call a warrior, what Shannon calls a warrior, but I'm so embedded in and believe in, and I'm all in on the warrior mindset, culture, and spirit. But it does not do me a service or anybody a service if I'm not willing to say, hey, how do you interpret this strength? So what does it mean to you? How do you define what it means to be a warrior?
I define a warrior as anybody who is willing to show up when they can't determine the outcome.
I love that.
I love that.
Very simple, just very
Yeah.
because that's, that speaks to the vulnerability. It speaks to the strength, and I think it also speaks to the, you've got what you need already. Like I fundamentally believe that we are all equipped with everything that we need to break through fear. We've just got to convince ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I totally believe everything that we need is inside us. And that either one, it was stripped away from us throughout our lives by the cultural programming or traumas or things like that. And so it's really a journey about coming back to you and like rediscovering or like, hey, I had that skill, it was stripped away from me. So now I need to relearn. It's like a relearning and coming back to you process.
Okay. So our second question, how have you demonstrated this definition in your life?
By answering the call to courage over and over and over again. By continuing to push through the discomfort. Like literally before I got on the show, I had to write an email to a client of like, yeah, I'll do that, but this time I'm gonna need to send you an invoice. And it was this weird, like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but I need to honor my time and expertise. And so even when I feel like I'm gonna hurl because it's super uncomfortable, and I'm like, it would be so much easier to just be like, fine, I'll do whatever you want, just like me.
Yeah.
I think I do it in small ways every day because I continue to show up in different arenas of my life when I can't determine and I don't know what the outcome is and what the future is going to hold.
Excellent. And to that, I think that, we've talked about this, but those tough conversations are the kindest conversations that we can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because then it breeds clarity and it breeds expectation, boundaries, and everything else we've talked about.
And it frees us from resentment, from poisoning those relationships with resentment. Yep.
So what is one piece of advice that you can give someone to help them live into being a warrior based off of your definition? Give them one piece of advice to help them understand how to show up.
See, you know how hard it is for me to limit myself to just one, Michael. So it's going to take me a minute.
Give us your discernment here. Just
Not a dissertation?
Either one, this will be the part 1, part 2 episode.
Right. One piece of advice of how to show up like a warrior. Honestly, it's believe in your worth, believe in your value, know it, claim it, own it, declare it, and own it in all the actions, big and small, that you take throughout a day. Honor it.
Yes. Love that. So as we know, with any time that there's like a conversation where it's like full of like sharing value, it's inevitable that you'll be in the shower or driving down the road and you'll be like, oh, I wish I would have said this. So before we wrap this up, I want to give you some space to maybe share things that you had intended to want to talk about today that you didn't get a chance to, or something that you feel would tie together some of the things that we talked about. So that way, this is a great way to kind of wrap up. I think it's clear that like we're going to have you on again because there's just so many different layers of stuff that we can talk about. So this is like introductory to Sarah episode.
Oh, that's so hard. Is there something that you guys want to know that I haven't said?
Oh, way to shift it back. I like the reverse.
Put it right back on us.
Do you see how I did that?
Tons, yes. I'm sure that there's a lot. So let's, really quickly end with your call to courage.
Okay.
Because I think that's, so I have it in front of me.
I was like, wait, Michael, did I write it down and send it to you so beautifully?
I will read it because I think that this is the perfect way to really, lay out and really wrap this up. So I will read it for you. That way you're not under the gun to memorize. So the mission of Sarah Madras Coaching, to build brave leaders who create courageous cultures.
I was like, I sent you the whole thing. You don't have to read the whole thing.
Yeah. So I think that, it's that idea of embracing that culture of courage. To me, that speaks to every level of being a warrior, because I think that the mindset shift that I try to work with people on when we say warrior is getting them away from the archaic, barbarian, primal nature of being a warrior and listening to the primal instinct. Like, if I feel a certain type of way, that feeling is what I talk about. It's listening to and leaning into that. And I think courage is a great place to start.
Yeah. So I'll finally answer your question of what's the one thing that I want people to know. Okay. So vulnerability is actually our greatest measure of courage. And so our definitions of warrior are actually the same, because you're saying not that primal warrior who shows up with all of his armor on and his big knife and he's ready to slay and take no prisoners. We're talking about the inner, internal, like sacred warrior who's saying, I'm going to show up and be with no weapon, no armor. When there's uncertainty, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to have emotional exposure and I'm going to show up and do it anyways. That's the greatest sign of courage. Yeah. So I'm an avid reader and I love to jump around from fiction, nonfiction, and going through like the classes. And so I started reading, probably for like the third time, reading Sun Tzu's Art of War. And I've been on this like understanding of what it means to be a peaceful warrior. And I recognize that those who seek peace study war from a perspective of understanding it from avoidance. The same cannot be said about people who seek war. So when I'm embracing peace, that's not to say that I'm not strong. I represent my strength by being able to embrace the peace. That kind of, to me, is like that same. Right. And it's so much easier to rage war. Like, that's easier is to offload hurt than it is to deal with our own hurt in order to create peace and understanding and connection with another person. Yep. Completely agree. So how can people connect with you? What do you want them to know? And where can they go to work with you or get to know you or check you out? Yep. So the best place to go to work with me for free is in our community of Brave Leaders Dare to Lead, where I do a weekly coaching call that you could hop on and get free coaching and also early access and discounts to working with me, early access to events, things like that. How to work with me, go to sarahmadras.com, and my one-on-one program, group coaching program, and then bringing me in to do Dare to Lead in your organization is all on my website. Absolutely. And again, highly recommend. Big fan, would recommend, 5 out of 5. And we'll have all the links to all of this in the description for the episode. And it was certainly a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. I can't recognize how much this is a full circle moment for me personally, but then just. And I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you. And I know. I was so glad I finally got to have interaction with Shannon. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, we will certainly have you on again in the future, because I just think that there's a lot of value that you can pour into others. And make sure that you join the Facebook group and check her out at sarahmadras.com. Hey Warriors, it's Michael, and I want to thank you for listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to us on your favorite streaming platforms and leave us a 5-star review. For more information, check out warriorofimpact.com.